7. Escalation of threats and the arms race. Some powers, whenever their logic fails, simply use the language of threat. The huge arms race casts a shadow of threat over the globe. The nations of Europe were the victims of 2 world wars and a number of other devastating conflicts, and were subjected to the consequences of the Cold War for many decades. Today, they are living under the shadow of the threat, and their interests, security, and lands are endangered under the shadow of the arms race imposed by certain big powers. A bullying power allows itself the right to set up a missile system, makes the life of the peoples of a continent bitter, and lays the ground for an arms race. Some rulers who superficially appear to be powerful believe the tools they have at hand can be used at any time and for any purpose, and consequently threaten others and cast the shadow of insecurity over nations and regions. There are, he's got that. International organizations and mechanisms clearly lack the capacity to overcome problems and challenges, to put in place fair and just relations and peace, fraternity, and security. There is hardly any government or nation that places much hope in these mechanisms to secure its rights or defend its independence, territorial integrity, and national interests. Dear friends and colleagues, there are many more challenges than the ones I have enumerated, and I know that one would have introduced more if one had wanted to touch upon them. But I chose to confine myself to the ones I have stated. Now the important and decisive question concerns the roots and causes of these challenges. A scientific and careful analysis shows that the root of the present situation lies in 2 fundamental factors. Without doubt, the first factor lies in the relations arising from the consequences of the Second World War. The victors of the war drew the roadmap for global domination and formulated their policies not on the basis of justice, but for ensuring the interests of the victors over the vanquished nations. Therefore, mechanisms arising from this approach and related policies have not been capable of finding just solutions for global solutions since 60 years ago. Some big powers still behave like the victors of the World War and regard other states and nations, even those that had nothing to do with the war, as the vanquished, and humiliate other nations and demand extortion from a condescending position similar to that of the master-servant relationship of the medieval ages. They believe that they should have more rights than others, and also are not accountable to any international organizations. Mr. President, among all the ineffective bodies, unfortunately, the UN Security Council ranks first. They have created circumstances in which some powers, with exclusive and the special right to veto in the Security Council, act as prosecutor, judge, and executioner, regardless of being a defendant or respondent. It is natural that countries that have been subjected to those powers' infringements of their rights have no hope in getting what they deserve from the Council. Unfortunately, humanity has witnessed that in all long wars, like the Korean and Vietnam wars, the war of the Zionists against the Palestinians and against Lebanon, the war of Saddam against the people of Iran, and the ethnic wars of Europe and Africa, one of the members of the Security Council was one of the belligerents or supported one party against the other, usually the aggressor, or the conflict itself.